Hello there, all my scrapping friends. Welcome back to Scrapping the Stash with Gail, and this is the last episode of Creative Compass, a scrap mount series. Today, we're going to finally finish this layout we've been working on for the last few weeks. In this video, I'm going to cover embellishing, title creation, and those finishing touches. We're going to talk about embellishment clusters and how to layer them. And we're also going to find places on the layout where we can anchor those embellishment clusters and employ some of those design concepts we've been learning throughout the series. So let's go ahead and get started and finish this layout. Now, when I left you in episode 3, we had figured out our layout background papers and also tried a new technique by ripping out the paper and putting this brick that matches all of the colors of the pictures so well so that it didn't overwhelm the layout. In this episode, we are going to embellish our layout and come up with a title for our layout as well, and then add the finishing touches. There is definitely an art to embellishing and not making it look like you just had a handful of stickers and sneezed them all over the layout. But I would like to help you graduate from feeling the need to fill all the empty spaces on your layout. Now, learning to embellish and creating embellish clusters is something that you have to develop over time and definitely practice. The more you do it, the better that you will get at it. I'm hoping in this video to show you the process I use for developing my embellishment clusters and actually helping you decide where to place your embellishment clusters on the page and why we place them where we do. The layout story is told by the title, your photos, and of course your journaling. Embellishments should support this story and bring cohesion to your layout. Now, if you use the embellishments with some design concepts, it'll create a flow and focus and balance on your page. So the first concept I want to talk about is blank or white space. Now, white space on a layout is basically any area on the layout that doesn't include the title, photos, or journaling. And most of us feel like we want to center everything and fill that space with a sticker or some kind of embellishment. What having blank or white space does is it actually forces the focus onto the important features. Now, instead of filling all the blank space on the page, creating kind of a chaotic look like you see here, embellishments should touch either a photo or your title or your journaling. That's how it connects everything together. So let's talk about this next design concept and rearrange some of these embellishments out here. Now, this is an example of blank or white space being utilized correctly. So all of this space that's blank, you don't even really see because we have our embellishments attached to a focal or anchor point. Now, embellishments should feel anchored to something real, not just floating out in space. So it could be touching a photo, either a corner or a side. On a journal box, it could be flat layers that frame rather than overpowering the words, like this rose here. And then on the title, you could add an embellishment either at the front or the back of the title, leading in or out of the title. Placement of these anchor points create a visual triangle. Now, a visual triangle creates flow, directing the eye to, across, and through focal points on the layout. So in other words, we usually start on the left because we all read left to right. So we start to the left, and this visual triangle of embellishments just brings your eye through this picture, through the journaling, and back up through the picture. Now, everything that's inside that triangle is your focal point, which is important because it's your title, your pictures, and your journaling. And because that visual triangle is happening, your eye knows how to look at this paper and actually not see the blank space because it's being utilized to focus on those important parts. And because the embellishments are anchored to the title, the corner of this photo at both ends, this journaling box, as well as this photo and the journaling box, because they're attached to those anchor points, it now provides cohesion and a flow within the layout. Now, while embellishments individually help tell the story, clustering them provides texture, depth, and interest. As you can see, I've made a cluster of embellishments at the top. I've added this oval, the tag, and this strip underneath the title. So that is one embellishment cluster. Then we move down here. I have added this journal card, the label tag, circular flare, as well as this word sentiment to make a cluster here. Then over here, I took this frame and tucked it under the journaling, this little tab that's got the butterfly on it, and then set the rose cluster on top of that. So that's the third cluster. So you can see that the white space or blank space still exists, but what we've done now is we've just created interest and some depth because we've layered some pieces below and underneath and on top of the focal points or the anchor points of the title, photo, and journaling. Let's build a couple of embellishment clusters together. The number one rule for embellishment clusters is layer, layer, layer. The more layers you can put in a cluster, the better it's going to look. Don't be afraid to cover some things up a bit. You also want to try to use an odd number of elements. And the reason for that is when there's an odd number of elements, the eye subconsciously finds the middle quicker and easier, and it's not trying to look through the cluster trying to figure out what the middle is. Now we know in the forefront that that's the middle, but there's two items. There's nothing in the middle. There's two items. So it tries to figure out which one is the center. If we take one of those away, it finds and rests on the center and focuses on that quickly. You want to use different textures, colors, shapes, sizes within your cluster. Otherwise, it's just going to look very random. As we build these next few clusters, I want you to visualize the layers of your layout. So the base layer is anything that's attached to your background paper. So this is our background paper, this white cardstock. Now, anything that you can do to the background would be like stenciling or stamping, anything that you can add directly to and flat to your background paper. Now, this also could just be general shapes like circles, ovals. It could be labels. It could be just a piece of patterned paper. Journal cards are great for this. Cut aparts are great for this. Also, border strips are good for this. So you can see we've got quite a bit on here that we can make into clusters. So that is your base layer, and it should be your largest piece of your embellishments. Then the middle layer, if you can visualize this as the same level as your photos, title, and journaling. So that's where you're going to be putting on top of your base layers. You can put things underneath or on top because that is a middle layer. So there is a piece under and a piece on top. Now this is where you're going to have kind of more your medium-sized embellishments. So that's where a tag might come in, like your die cuts or chipboard. This is also where you're going to want to put in your icons, like your florals, or if it's a travel trip, you're going to want to bring in your geotags, your planes, your trains, automobiles, okay, those kinds of things. You're going to want to bring in maybe some general shapes. You can see just by doing that, there's already some layers and some interest because we've got different shapes and different colors, dark and light, light and dark, dark and light. We've got lines and circles. So you've got just different textures plus they're layered. You are also going to have the top layer, which will be where you're going to add in your smaller embellishments. Now, I like to refer this as the dimensional layer because this is the layer that where you're going to maybe add dimensional tape or pop up those pieces just so that they create a little bit more depth. So that's when you're going to bring in your smaller pieces like tags and labels, flair, and brads, those types of things. How about a little topiary here? That topiary is cute. Okay, so you can see now that everything is on top of the base and they're touching and they're layered. So on this, I would pop up the rose. On this, I would pop up this label. On this, I would pop up the flare. And on this, I would pop up the topiary. Now, these all have three elements in them, so therefore they are balanced. Now, obviously, these are just pretty common or smaller clusters. There's only three elements. So this is where you can bring in your stenciling. Now, obviously, I didn't stencil this on, but I stenciled it on some paper to put to kind of tuck behind. You can start adding in extra leaves and florals behind everything. You can add word sentiments and then your bling or your final touches, things like little brads or dots with your markers, just all those kinds of little things. Now, see that cluster right there. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's 9 embellishments total in there. The other thing that you want to consider after you've created your visual triangle with your clusters is changing the sizes of your clusters. One smaller, one medium, and one large. So now I've got these embellishment clusters here. Now you can see that with the title, it's a rather large one. It encompasses a border strip, some stenciling, a tag, a frame, an oval cluster base, and a ticket. And it also has these brads, these 3 brads, and that also is in a triangle. So that would be considered my larger cluster. Then we come down here and I've got an embellishment base and it's a dark color. So that makes this word sentiment pop off the page. And so then I've also got a couple of medium pieces, plus I've got the brad here. So that's kind of a medium cluster. Then we come over here to a smaller cluster where again, I've got a base, a medium, and a small piece. So that's a smaller cluster. This has more elements, this has less, this has the minimal. So that just gives it a little bit of variety and also definitely screams where to start on the page. Now, the last thing I want to talk about with embellishment clusters on a page is you want to add something repeated in each cluster. Maybe the same color dot, a heart, a word strip. All of that will make it be more cohesive for the layout as well. Now, I firmly believe in shopping your stash for things that are related to the layout that you're working on. I do not look for embellishments prior to this stage of the layout. Until I figure out my background papers and colors and whatnot, that's when I start thinking about embellishments. I think a lot of times when we're thinking about our embellishments throughout this process, that's when we get stuck on making decisions because we're trying to include things that we have or might want to use to guide the direction of our layout before we even get to that step. All right, friends, are you ready to finally finish this layout? I've went ahead and made my embellishment clusters, and I am going to work through my title and journaling with you as the final touches, and we will complete this layout. Yay! Happy for us. So I'm just going to show you close-ups of this layout. So this right here, it is a cluster of balloons, right? So there's plenty of color, texture, depth. I have these three on the top lifted. I actually went ahead and used this background brick as, sorry, that's my title printing, as my base layer for the embellishment. And then I also have this word sentiment. This is what family looks like, with a little small word sentiment that says celebrate. So you can see this is going to be my large cluster, and there's plenty to focus on there. Now this is going to bring our eye across, okay, way across over here through all the pictures over to my birthday cake. And I just think this turned out so cute. And I love how it goes over the journal square here. But I used this cake and put some candles on it. I used a Wish definition stamp that is retired from Stampin' Up. And then I matted that with the blue and added some presents here. So this is my next cluster. I did go ahead and tear a little bit more here and put the brick behind it. So I'm using that as the base of my embellishment cluster. The cake is popped up, and then this word sentiment here is also coming off the cake. So it too is popped up off the page for some dimension. So we started here. We went to the medium cluster, and then we're going to move up over here to our small embellishment cluster. Now these hearts are just so cute. I love it. This is from a die cut from the Scrapping Book Coach membership. It's a die cut, and it actually die cuts both of these hearts. So this is the center of this heart. And so every time that you use this die cut, you get two hearts. I just love, 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 love that. I stamped this with some ink to bring that yellow in, that mustardy yellow. And then I inked around this heart and popped that up and put the 26 on there. That's how old my son is. And then I added this little word sentiment, let's party. So there's 5 pieces there. Those are my clusters, and let's move on to the finishing touches, which is finalizing your title and adding that journaling. We're going to end with what we started with. We are done. Jazz hands. Applause, applause, applause. Look at this stunning layout. We have done so much, and we have learned so much with the Creative Compass, a scrap map series. This is the title, Birthday Boy. Now I did not tape it down because I wanted to bring it up close so that you could see it without the layout. So I made this on Canva. I am going to do another tutorial soon about how to make your titles in Canva, and also how to layer titles and all of those things. So watch for that coming. But I made this in Canva, and just fussy cut it out. The white is not part of it. I just fussy cut that part out. But one thing that I want to tell you about why I started making my titles in Canva a lot more is because this is the first one that I made. And once I cut it out and put it on the layout, it's not bad. It really isn't that bad, but it kind of got lost a little bit. And so I felt like, gosh, it won't fit there anymore. So I tried to put it down here, which, still looks okay. But then this looked naked for my eye because that's where my cluster is. So I decided to make it bigger in Canva and reprint it, and it took me less than a minute to do that. And so this, I feel like, again, even though it's covering up some of the banner, you can still see the banner because it continues out the front end of the title. It attaches to my large cluster and the banner continues. So that's just part of the one big cluster up here. The medium cluster is attached to my journal, which I printed out in Canva as well. And I actually have it up on foam tape so that it can attach into my medium cluster here. So that second medium cluster brings us over to the journaling and these pictures over here. And we've already discussed the small cluster up here. So we have finished a layout. I really hope that you learned a lot with this creative compass. Please continue to go back and review. It's all there for you, all my entire process. I follow that same process for every single layout. So if you want a detailed step-by-step process for how I develop my layouts, you can always refer back to the Creative Compass, a scrap map series. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey, and I look forward to scrapping more layouts with you in the near future. Bye-bye for now.